Tonight on What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update, Wildcard, and Positive Correlation segments, we're talking about organization. Project management skills can help you organize all sorts of things, your work, your home, and your thoughts. You can use the same processes to evaluate ideas, make plans, and put them into action that you would use on projects or on anything you want. In a way, making your life a project. Whether you want to learn a new skill, organize work, or your habits, using a project management approach can help you do it better. Initiate, plan, execute, monitor and control, and close. All logical steps in a repeatable process that will put you on the right track and keep you there. Interested in finding out how? Stick with us. Hello guys, I really enjoy making these videos for you, so if you get value from them or know someone who would, please support us by hitting like, subscribe, leaving comments, and sharing. This is PM Update with Leah and Mia. And now your host, Leah. Welcome back to PM Update. I'm Leah. Being organized can be a big help in getting things done. In a situation where efficiency is important, it can even be critical to your success. Having project management skills and using them to be more organized can help you even more. For example, if you have a goal to work out more often, organizing your schedule, location, and your gear means you're more likely to do those workouts. It would look something like this. I want to exercise for an hour 5 days per week. You would review your schedule to make the time, check into various workout routines to pick one that will take you an hour, make sure you have the equipment you need, and finally make sure you have all of these things ready the day before so you can just grab it and go when the time in your schedule comes around. Mia has some other examples for us in her stories this week. What can you tell us about them, Mia? Tonight we have two segments about a pair of best friends named Bob and Blake. Blake is very organized, and Bob is not. Bob was having trouble getting everything done that he needed to do. He was missing school assignments, his apartment was a mess, and he was always late. After noticing that Blake didn't seem to have the same problems, Bob decided to ask how he managed to do it all. Thanks, Mia. It certainly sounds like we have an interesting show tonight. Being organized doesn't come easily to everyone. If you weren't born with it or didn't learn it from your family growing up, there's no better time than the present to work on it. And taking a project management approach to fixing the areas that you want to improve can make it easier. Organization and project management skills are both important. Project management gives you the steps, and organization makes it easier to do them so you can move on to the next thing. They work very well together, and they can help you either finish steps faster or show you where your plan needs to be adjusted earlier. This in turn can help you avoid wasting time on things that won't work. Now, our first quote question of the day. Do you know who said, "The only difference between a mob and a trained army is organization"? The answer to this question in Mia's stories coming up next. Bob and Blake are best friends, but have very different habits. Bob is messy, constantly late for events, and with his homework. Blake is very organized and on time for everything. Now, Bob was perfectly fine living his carefree life until he realized he was missing some deadlines that he actually cared about. Bob and Blake were playing video games one Saturday afternoon when Bob suggested going out later. Blake said no because he wanted to get some work done on a paper for class they had together on Monday. Bob looked shocked. He forgot all about it. He needed to finish his paper too. He remembered that he did some work on it right after it was assigned and collected all of his research but hadn't looked at it in weeks. It was going to be tough to write the whole thing in a day and a half, so he asked Blake for help. Blake was more than happy to help his friend. He noted, though, that Bob's apartment was a mess and thought that they would make better progress at his apartment. So Bob collected his research material and computer, and they went to Blake's place. Blake explained that he always put his big school projects into a project management format. He starts with an idea, does some general research to refine his topic, and create a thesis statement. This is similar to initiation and planning and scope refining. Blake said that since Bob had already selected the topic and did the general research, he only needed to complete the scope refining by creating a thesis statement. Then Bob can finish the planning part by creating an outline. Blake explained that once he gets to this point, he creates a schedule so that he breaks up the work into manageable parts. If it's due in 4 weeks, then each week he will write about one section in the paper. The writing part is execution, and the schedule helps with monitoring and control. For this paper, Blake spent the first week doing the initiation and planning and scope. His paper has 3 sections, so each week was a separate section. He has completed that work since this is the final week, and he is spending extra time revising and writing his conclusion. Bob realized the schedule wasn't going to help him since he only had a day and a half to write the whole thing. Blake suggested that Bob take some time to review or skim his research material in order to come up with a thesis statement and build the outline. Then he can start the hard part of actually writing the paper. Bob agreed and quickly started rereading his notes. Blake only had a couple of hours of work doing his revisions and conclusion, so he spent the rest of the afternoon helping his friend. While Bob was writing section 1, Blake reviewed the thesis statement and outline. Then he read some of the material that applied to the sections 2 and 3. He marked the notes where the relevant information was. Then he underlined a couple of sentences in the notes and reading that he felt made particularly good points for the subject Bob was writing about. After several hours of dedicated work, Blake, of course, had finished his paper, and Bob had finished section 1. So they decided to take a break for dinner. Bob looked around at Blake's place and realized how neat it was, how his notes were organized, and how he was really prepared for his paper and classwork in general. Bob realized that he could probably use some tips from Blake, for more than just this paper. So he asked him how he did it all. Blake explained that he learned some of it from his parents. His mother is a project manager, and he can remember her explaining things to him from a project management perspective when he was younger. But some of it he came up with on his own. He never liked being late or unprepared for things, so planning and thinking ahead was something he did naturally. Blake offered to show him how, after Bob finished his paper. Bob went home after dinner. He got a little more work done before going to bed. He woke up early to give himself as much time as possible to complete his work. It was a frantic day getting all of his ideas on paper in a logical way. It definitely wasn't his best work, but since he had left it to the last minute, there wasn't much he could do about it. At least he would have something to turn in on Monday. He was still making minor edits a few minutes before the cutoff time for turning it in, but he made it. Bob rewarded himself that evening with some video games. But he started thinking about how he might improve his organizational skills. Blake had time to game and still got his work done. If Blake could do it, so could he. In the end, Bob was able to pull this together with the help of his friend, but it definitely wasn't the best effort. He actually wanted to do well in school, but college life was his first experience without boundaries or much structure. Using Blake's project management approach helped him complete the task, but what he really needed was to develop an organization and structure that worked for him. I love that about organization and structure that works for you. Thanks, Mia. There are all kinds of tools out there for whatever you want to organize, but sometimes when you try them out, it's a bit of a hit and miss for whatever's going to work for you. Some systems will be great, some might need a little tweaking, and some won't work at all. If you do need help, a good place to start is asking friends what works for them. If you know them well, you will likely be able to tell what parts of their system will work for you and which won't. And you get the added bonus of a genuine opinion of how the system works for them before you try it. Online reviews are a great concept, but everyone is different and not all of them are legitimate. Now, in our first story, Blake walked Bob through his process and even helped him with some of the grunt work so that Bob could finish faster. When Bob uses this system for his next big school paper, he won't have to take shortcuts and will likely do a much better job. At the very least, he will have more time for final edits. Now, for the answer to our first quote question of the show, do you know who said, "The only difference between a mob and a trained army is organization"? It was the 30th U.S. President, Calvin Coolidge. And for our second quote question of the show, do you know who said, "The secret to multitasking is that it isn't actually multitasking, it's just extreme focus and organization"? The answer to this and the second part of our show coming up next. Bob and Blake are gaming again, and Bob is feeling pretty good about getting his paper in on time. He knows that he still has some room for improvement, though. One assignment completed on time doesn't make much difference in his life if he can't apply it to the rest of his life. After this gaming session, he gets a little more help from Blake, looking to make some big changes. The next weekend, Blake and Bob were back at Bob's messy place again, playing video games. During a break, Bob thanked Blake for his help on the paper and getting organized the week before. Then Bob asked if he might be willing to help him get better organized. He remarked that Blake's apartment was tidy, he always turned in his assignments on time, and he still had time to play video games and spend time with his friends. How did he do it? After considering this question, Blake thought it was mostly because his schedule didn't change much from week to week, except for exams. He doesn't commit to more than he is capable of fitting into his schedule, work or leisure time. Sometimes when there is less homework, he gets a little more free time, but he never really knows until he starts working on it. He has a set number of hours that are required for his classes. He also has a set number of hours that are dedicated to doing homework. And the big assignments are treated like projects. Bob pointed out that that only explained how he managed to get his schoolwork done on time, not the rest of it. So Blake showed him his schedule. He also explained that he kept his place clean by not letting it get as bad as Bob's place to begin with. And he straightened things up before he went to bed every evening. He also packed his backpack with books, laptop, and whatever else he needed the next day, the night before. Preparing when he was relaxed and not in a hurry meant that he rarely forgot to bring something to class. He also set up alerts on his phone for reminders of when and what homework was due. Bob pointed out that Blake's schedule showed him doing laundry on Friday nights. "You don't do laundry on Friday, dude. We always go out with a group on Friday. Unless you have a date. But I'm guessing you don't do laundry with a date." Blake laughed at that and explained that he gets out of class early on Fridays, starts his laundry, then puts it in the dryer before he leaves the apartment. No one else does laundry on Friday nights, so he never has to wait for washers or dryers in the laundry room. If he's sober when he gets home, he puts it away. If not, he brings it back to his apartment and puts it away in the morning. Saturday is his sleep-in day. Blake also has an allowance, so he has to keep to a budget. Keeping his finances organized is as important to him as keeping his home and schedule organized. He chooses to eat fairly cheap food like ramen and beans and rice during the week so that he can spend more of his food budget on fun and junk on the weekends. He also takes advantage of the university facilities like the gym, library, and computer labs as often as possible. Bob thought about everything Blake had to say and then realized that it would be hard to get organized while surrounded by the chaos of his messy apartment. Blake gave him a copy of his schedule for reference. After Blake left, Bob decided to organize his apartment. He spent a couple of hours cleaning and putting things away, and finally, surrounded by a clutter-free environment, he felt ready to make a schedule for himself. Blake's level of organization was a bit much for Bob, but he figured he could keep to a schedule at least on the weekdays, so he made a 5-day schedule. Getting up at the same time every morning and hitting the gym before classes like he did in high school seemed possible for him, so his day would start with getting up at 6:30 a.m., an hour for the gym, and an hour and a half to shower, eat, and get to his first class at 9 a.m. He would stay on campus until 4 p.m., eating lunch and studying in between classes. He also used another of Blake's suggestions by putting the due dates for all of his homework assignments in his calendar and set up alerts to remind himself what he needed to do to complete them. He certainly didn't have as much free time for gaming as he did before, but he was getting everything done and not at the last minute like he was before. His weekends were still open for gaming. He still made time for homework, he just didn't put it on a weekend schedule. The next time he gamed with Blake, the apartment was cleaner, and now they were both turning in their assignments on time. In fact, they both decided game time was over in the afternoon so that they could work on their next research paper assignment. Bob was able to take Blake's project management approach, his schedule, and organization approach and change it to work for him. He would never be as organized as Blake, but he didn't really need to be. He just needed to be able to get his work done and organize his life and apartment just enough to make these things easier instead of having barriers to progress. That is so true, Mia. Thank you. Many times our habits and environment can get in the way of doing things we want to do. Sometimes creating and following a structure, like a project management approach, and organizing things can give us enough of a boost to make things just enough easier that we can get them done. What kind of barriers have you had in your life that you have been able to fix? Let us know in the comments. Even though Bob would never want to live as structured a life as Blake, he was able to use his structure for something that worked for him. You can do this too. Whenever you see people around you, friends or family, that are good at doing certain things, don't be afraid to ask them how they do it, or for help. You don't need to do it exactly like they do in order for it to benefit you. I read a lot of instructions for how to do things when I do research for this show, and rarely do I find a list that exactly matches how I want to do it or how I think it would work better for me. And if I can do that, so can you. Now it's time for the answer to our final quote question. Do you know who said, "The secret to multitasking is that it isn't actually multitasking, it's just extreme focus and organization"? It was film director, producer, writer, and composer Joss Whedon. That's all for What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update with Leah and Mia and our WildCard and Positive Correlation segments for this week. Thank you for watching and see you next time on our next episode of PM Update. Good night. Hey there, don't forget to support these videos by hitting like and subscribe. I love seeing comments too.